Hi, welcome to the Crates Motel. My name's Conan. In today's video, we're going to look at the mother ducker in MPC Standalone. And I want to start off by saying I've had a ton of requests to cover this plugin, and today I'm just going to go over the basics, not the more advanced uses. The plugin is really deep and there's so much you can do with it. But today I'm just going to go over the basics. Check out the outro, by the way, and I suggest some other uses for it. But like I said, just the basics today. Let's jump in. So as I said, the very basics, but once you have a basic understanding of this plugin, you will see the possibilities that you have with it. It's such a deep plugin and there's so much more to it than using it just to make the music pump up and down. So to explain what Mother Ducker is, it's a sidechaining plugin, and sidechaining is, to give you an outline, sidechaining is when you use one source to duck another source out of the way to give you a more balanced mix. It's not the only thing it can be used for, but it's the basic use of a sidechain. The concept came from radio, where the presenter's voice would duck the music out, kind of like an auto fader. That's where it was originally used. So I have a very basic house drum beat with some pads and some bass. I'm using this because it's probably the simplest way to demonstrate how to use the plugin. If I had like a really busy mix, complicated boom bap beat, etc., you probably wouldn't hear the effects as much. So I'm going to use it for this. Long sustained notes and the bass line is probably the best way to demonstrate. So we have a couple of programs. We have the drum program, the pads program, and the bass program. Now the pads, I want to duck the pads out of the way. So in the program inserts, I've inserted Mother Ducker because this is the source that I want to dip out of the way, duck out of the way. As you can see, very basic controls, kind of like a compressor. I'd actually do a video on compression in the MPC where I explain attack, release, threshold ratio, etc. in more detail. But as you can see, it's very similar to a compressor where you can change the attack, change the release, change the knee, and change the ratio, and then use the threshold to dial it in. Now, when you first insert the plugin, the initial preset has auto switched on. Now, auto's not auto gain, unfortunately. We would love auto gain in all our plugins in Akai. We've already asked for it a million times. What auto does is, as far as I can establish, it's more auto release, auto knee, etc. And it's an auto listen. It's listening to the source and deciding by the tempo, by the transient of the source, what kind of release to apply. I want to switch that off because I want to be able to control the release, the gain, the knee, etc. So with the source that you want to duck out of the way, you insert Mother Ducker. And like I said, very simple. And I've got it set to bus 1. Make a note of that because you can actually change the bus that you have the Mother Ducker on and the source on as well. But they need to be on the same bus. Now if we come out, and now I want to use the kick drum to duck the pads out of the way. So in the drum program, I don't want to use the whole drum kit because then I'm going to be ducking the pads with the hi-hats, any kind of ghost snares, kick drums, etc. I just want it to be pumping up and down on the floor. So if I go into the pad inserts, the kick drum is on A07. The insert, I have Mother Ducker input, and that's the difference. With the source that you want to duck out of the way, you insert Mother Ducker, and with the source you want to use to do the ducking, you use Mother Ducker input. So you've got Mother Ducker input. In Mother Ducker input, you can see there's no controls at all. All it is you choose the bus that you're going to use. And you've got 8 different buses to choose from. But make sure that the source is the same bus as the source that you want to duck. So in this case, we've got them both on bus 1. So with it switched off, you can hear at the moment the strings, the sustain, they're just drifting nicely, string paddy sound. But when I bring in the Mother Ducker, what it's going to do is it's going to duck the pads along with the kick drum. You can hear it ducking. It's very subtle at the moment, but I'm going to show you how you can change the attack and the release and show you the effect being used a little bit more exaggerated. So let's come out of here and go back into the program. Go back into Mother Ducker. So now we're back on the pads Mother Ducker, not the Mother Ducker input, the Mother Ducker. And you can see here the actual ducking that's going on. If you just watch just very carefully here. The key, which is written at the top here, I don't know if you can make that out, is the sound that you're using to do the ducking. So you can see the kick drums flicking in. And here you can see the reduction that's being made. I don't know if you can make that out on there as well. It's just a really light grey. So to exaggerate it a little bit more, just to show you, if we come out and actually if we go into track mix and we turn the drums down, so you can still hear the pads going up and down. So if we come out here, go back into Mother Ducker, and I'm going to show you that using attack and release you can dial in how the actual ducking happens, whether you want it to be really quick and sharp or whether you want it to be more dreamy and relaxed, or whether you want to kind of introduce a little bit of swing into it, and then using the threshold, etc. So I'm going to over exaggerate it. So by dropping the threshold, it's going to reduce the level of the pads a lot more. And our nice little Akai duck jumps up and down a little bit more. Personally, I think this is a little bit of a waste of CPU and RAM. An auto gain instead. Get rid of the duck, put in an auto gain. That would make me happy. So let's change the threshold again. So you can use the thresholds to dial it in once you want to, you want to get a feel for it. You want to, if you want it to be really, really heavy, obviously you take the threshold right down. If you want it to be subtle, you have the threshold up. And you can see the reduction being made here, as I explained. So using the attack and the release, if I really emphasize it, and by the way, using the threshold and really emphasizing the effect is a really good way to dial in your attack and your release. It's a good way to do it with compression as well. And I say to students that I work with that if they want to learn about what attack and release does, a good way to do it is to just completely over exaggerate the effect. Get your attack and release right whilst it's over exaggerated. Same with the ratio as well, and your knee. You can get a feel for what the compressor or the ducker is actually doing by completely over exaggerating it, and then dial back to where you actually want it in the mix. So I'm going to show you what I mean by that. Now you can hear with a super fast release and a super fast attack, there's actually a bit of distortion. And that's just purely because it can't deal with it. So that would be a bit too much, obviously. And with the release and the attack dial back, you can hear that it's not really getting enough time to even come all the way back in again. At that kind of speed, it's more dreamy and more relaxed. But if I want it really, really sharp, I take the attack up, the release up. And then I'll dial back the threshold. Now another really common use for ducking is to duck the bass. The kick and the bass are always clashing with each other. So a way that a lot of people use a ducker or a sidechain, and it's actually one of the most requested things I've had, is how do I duck the bass out of the way using mother ducker out of the way of the kick drum. So using exactly the same method, you can duck the bass out of the way of the kick. And what it's going to, the reason why you'd want to do that is because you've got bass and kick drums. They are both kind of around about the same kind of frequencies. They can be sort of anything from 20 hertz up to sort of 200, and they're going to clash. And if you've got a lot of bass going on at the same time as the kick drum, dynamically you might start getting lower in distortion. The track's just going to be overwhelming. But if you're ducking the bass out of the way with the kick drum, then you're just going to have a better track dynamically. You're not likely to get low distortion in the low end, and it's just a really easy way of, I mean, this is crazy. When I first started mixing in studios in the early 80s, started as a tape op, one of my jobs was to ride the fader on the mixer, because we didn't have automation. There were a few automated mixes in the early 80s, some SSL ones, but they were super expensive and we didn't have one. So one of my jobs was to ride faders, and one of the jobs that I did have, I remember, was riding the fader so that I would dip the bass when the kick came in or when drum rolls would come in. And to think that I used to have to do that, now we have an automated way of doing it. And this is a really common use, to be honest, especially in hip-hop trap with a lot of 808s and stuff. They want to dip the bass sound out of the way with the kick drum. But also in house music, French disco house, Daft Punk use it a lot to get that real kind of pumpy effect. But it's really good. You've got two sources, the bass line and the kick drum, all together in the same kind of frequency range. So dipping it out of the way is just going to make you have a more level mix, easier to control in the actual overall mix, and dynamically it's just not going to be all over the place and kicking your subs out everywhere, and it just makes it a lot easier to mix, a lot easier to gain stage, and you've just got a lot more control over things. So to show you what I've done here with the bass, I've purposely set this up like this. As you can see, I've got it on bus 2, and at the moment I don't have anything going into bus 2 to duck the bass. So I'm going to put that back to bus 1, and now because I've switched it back to bus 1, I've got the mother ducker inserted on the program bass program inserts for the bass. Mother ducker, as I said, it was on bus 2. So there's nothing going on there at the moment, so it's not ducking. But when I switch it to bus 1, you'll hear that instantly the kick drum will be keying the bass, and you'll start hearing the bass ducking out of the way. So I'm going to have it on bus 2 to start with, so there's no ducking. And then when I click it in, you'll hear, it's subtle because I've made it that way. I've made it subtle. I don't want it to be too obvious. And you'll hear that it's just ducking the bass slightly. So that's using the kick drum on the bass. Now let's just say I had a situation where I wanted to duck out, say, the bass, for instance. We're going to use the bass as an example, but I don't want it to be ducked out using the kick drum. I want it to be ducked out slightly different, not just 4 on the floor pumping, but also I don't want the source that's actually ducking it to be heard in the mix. So what I've done, in a roundabout kind of way, is I think it's on... Yeah, it's on here. So what I've done is I've written a rim shot sound into the sequence. At the moment, as you can see, it's turned down. Obviously I don't want that rim shot sound in there, do I? So I have that turned down. Now on the pad insert for the rim shot, which you can't hear now because I've turned it down, I have the mother ducker input, but I have that switched to bus 2, see? Now if I come out and I go to the bass program, which at the moment, if you remember, is switched to bus 1. So it's ducking when the key sound is the kick drum, bus 1. But if I now switch this to bus 2, and I've got the rim shot turned on, the mother ducker input is on bus 2 on the rim shot, what's going to happen is it's going to now be using the rim shot as the key, but the rim shot is turned down so you can't hear it in the mix. So I'm using a signal to key the bass in a slightly different way. If you remember, it was 1, 2, 3, 4, da 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 da. So it's going to be keying. I mean, I would never key a bass like this, but I just want to show you to demonstrate. So, like I said, now I've switched the bass to bus 2. Now, if you watch the key and the reduction, you'll see that it's going along with the rim shot rather than the kick drum. I mean, it sounds stupid, but let me just see if I can, actually, if we come out here, turn this down. So now you can hear that the bass, so that's a way that you can duck a source, but without actually having the source that's doing the ducking actually in the mix. And so that can be really, really useful, and I'm sure you're starting to see the possibilities of what you can do if you are ducking something, but you don't necessarily have to have the source that's making the ducking happen actually even in the mix. Now also bear in mind as well that the source that you're using to create the ducking, in this case I've used a kick drum and a rim shot, because the ducker is listening to the transient of the actual source, it does actually make a difference to how the attack and the release will actually react. So for instance, a rim shot, and this is why I used a rim shot and a kick drum to demonstrate, obviously a rim shot has a much sharper transient, much quicker attack than a kick drum. So the attack settings and the release settings are going to be different for a rim shot than they would be for a kick drum. So again, you can see the possibilities that you've got there. It's not just about doing the actual ducking, it's thinking about what source you're going to actually use to do the ducking with, and thinking about the transient of that source, the attack and sustain of that source. But it also has to make you realize that there is no default preset that you can use on the ducker, because every single source that you're ducking is going to be different and react differently, and every single source that you're going to be using to do the ducking is going to be different. So that's why you have to really kind of adjust the settings. Yeah, of course, the way that Akai has the initial default preset set up, you can just bang it on and everything is bouncing up and down exactly as you want. But if you want to have a lot more control over it, that's when you need to get into the settings, and that's when you need to think about what source you're using to do the ducking, and and think about how the transient is going to affect the attack and the release. And there you have it, very, very basic outline of what the mother ducker can do. But I hope that it's inspired you to start thinking what you can do with the mother ducker. There's so much more than just ducking a beat on, and what we're used to, 4 on the floor, ducks it out the way, gets things pumping. There's a lot more that you can do with it creatively, and I hope this video has inspired you to at least start thinking about that. Now, I am going to be doing another video on more advanced techniques, and I'm going to be showing how you can use it on vocals and reverb on vocals, how you can imprint some swing on your instruments and synths, etc. And I'm going to attempt to make a video on a really old mixing technique called the rear bus technique. By all means, look that up on YouTube. I think I've worked out a way of doing it in the MPC Standalone. Well, I have worked out a way of doing it in the MPC Standalone, but I'm just refining it at the moment before I do a video on it. But most of all, you know, I hope that getting a grasp of what it can basically do and looking at the total basics of it, you'll start thinking to yourself, well, actually, yeah, I can do this with it. I don't have to just make the beat pump. I can also duck things out the way in different ways rhythmically. I can use it as a subtle kind of gate type kind of thing, you know, which was the original concept. It was used to duck music out of the way when a radio presenter spoke, like I said. So just by taking the very basic concepts, you can take it down so many different paths and do so many different things with it. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe for more mixing, mastering and MPC tutorials and reviews. This is the Crates Motel. My name's Conan. Till next time.